578 Justinian II, Byzantine Emperor 565-78 nephew of Justinian I, dies. In 1056 Henry Roman III, Holy Roman Emperor 1046-56, dies at 38. In 1111 Robrecht II of Jerusalem, Count of Flanders First Crusader, dies. In 1112 Sigebert of Gembloux, French chronicler. In 1285 Philippe Roman III the Bold, King of France 1270-85, dies of dysentery at 40. In 1392 Yusuf II, ruler of Granada 1391-92, dies possibly killed by a poisoned tunic BC 1356. In 1399 Raymond of Capua, Italian Master General of the Dominican monastic order, dies at about 69. In 1496 Ferdinand II, King of Naples 1495-96, dies at 27. In 1528 Richard Foxe, English churchman. In 1557 Il Bacchiacca Franceso Ubertini, Italian Renaissance painter, dies at 63. In 1564 Pierre de Manchicourt, Flemish composer, dies at about 54, birth date uncertain. In 1565 Lodovico Ferrari, Italian mathematician known for solving the quartic equation, dies at 43 of arsenic poisoning administered by his sister 1. In 1606 Philippe Desportes, French poet b. 1546. In 1631 Arabella Holles, wife of English politician Thomas Wentworth, dies. In 1707 Daniel Speer, German composer, dies at 71. In 1714 Kaibara Ekiken, Japanese philosopher b. 1630. In 1740 Johann Philipp Baratier, German scholar b. 1721. In 1763 August Roman III, King of Poland and Grand Duke of Lithuania 1733-63, Elector of Saxony, dies of a stroke at 66. In 1777 J.N. Andrzej Zegner, Slovak and German mathematician, physicist, and physician, dies at 72. In 1787 Thomas Stone, U.S. Attorney and signer of the U.S. Declaration of Independence, dies at about 44. In 1799 Antonio Diniz da Cruz e Silva, Portuguese poet o Hyssop, dies at 68. First Marquess Cornwallis, British general and colonial administrator leading British general in the American War of Independence, dies of fever at 66. In 1813 Etienne Ozy, French composer, dies at 58. Shawnee Chief Battle of Thames, dies in battle at 45. In 1818 Nancy Hanks Lincoln, mother of Abraham Lincoln, dies at 34. French Queen of Holland 1806-10, dies at 54. In 1848 Joseph Hormer Freiherr zu Hortenberg, Austrian politician, dies at 67. In 1855 Sir Thomas Mitchell, Scottish surveyor and explorer of southeastern Australia, dies at 63. In 1861 Antoni Melchior Ficzorkowski, Polish Catholic Archbishop of the Archdiocese of Warsaw 1856-61, dies at 83. In 1864 Imre Mátyás, Hungarian writer known for the tragedy of Man, dies at 41. In 1867 Thomas Teaklich Speck, German violinist and composer, dies at 67. In 1871 Alexander Afanasiev, Russian ethnographer and folklorist, dies at 45. In 1878 George B. Vashon, American lawyer, academic and poet, first African-American lawyer, dies of yellow fever at 54. In 1880 Jacques Offenbach, German-French composer Tales of Hoffmann, dies at 61. In 1883 Joachim Barrand, French paleontologist and geologist fossils in Bohemia, opposed Darwin's theory of evolution, dies at 84. American financier and railroad promoter Transcontinental Railroad Union Pacific, dies at 65. In 1892 Bill Powers, American outlaw of the Old West the Dalton Gang, killed in failed bank robbery attempt in Coffeyville, Kansas. In 1892 Bob Dalton, American outlaw of the Old West leader of the Dalton Gang, killed in failed bank robbery attempt in Coffeyville, Kansas at 23. In 1892, Dick Broadwell, American outlaw of the Old West, the Dalton Gang, killed in failed bank robbery attempt in Coffeyville, Kansas at 30. In 1892, Grant Dalton, American outlaw of the Old West, the Dalton Gang, killed in failed bank robbery attempt in Coffeyville, Kansas at 31. In 1899, Johann Nepomuk Fuchs, Austrian composer, dies at 57. In 1903, Bradley Tyler Johnson, American brigadier general in the Confederate Army First Battle of Winchester, dies at 74. In 1906, Raja Ravi Varma, Indian painter, dies at 58. In 1911, Charles Malherbe, French violinist and composer, dies at 58. In 1913, Hans von Bartels, German painter, Three Dutch Fisher Girls, dies at 56. In 1915, Jos Mara Yusendezager, Spanish Basque composer Mendy and High in the Mountains, dies of tuberculosis at 28. In 1915, Otto Valdemar Malling, Danish organist and composer Det Hellige Land, Opus 46, dies at 67. In 1918, Roland Garros, French pioneering aviator and WWI pilot, shot down and killed during WWI at 28. In 1919, Jean Lunicod, Prussian pianist and composer, dies at 66. In 1924, Joseph V. Zener, Canadian conductor, Orchestre Symphonique de Québec, 1902-24, and composer Le Raja, dies at 75. In 1924, Tom Campbell, South African cricket wicket-keeper, 5 tests, 8 dismissals, dies in a railway accident at 42. In 1930, Christopher Birdwood Thompson, 1st Baron Thompson, British military officer, B. 1875. In 1933, Nikolai Nikolaevich Yudenich, Russian WWI general, dies at 71. In 1933, Nikolaj N. Jodnitsch, Russian general counter-revolutionary, dies at 71. In 1933, René Adore Eugène de La Fontaine, French actress, The Big Parade, dies of tuberculosis at 35. In 1933, William Beek, S.A., American sports writer and baseball executive, Chicago Cubs president, 1919-33, dies at 57. In 1934, Jean Vigo, French actor and director, Zero for Conduct, El Atlant, dies of complications from tuberculosis at 29. In 1936, J. Slauerhoff, Dutch poet, writer and ship S. Dr. Simon S. Grave, dies of ill health at 38. In 1938, Sister Faustina Helena Kowalska, Polish Roman Catholic saint, nun and mystic, dies of suspected tuberculosis at 33. In 1940, Ballantyne Booth, English officer in the Salvation Army and co-founder of Volunteers of America. In 1940, Lincoln Loy McCandless, American cattle rancher and politician, dies at 81. In 1940, Sylvester Revuelters, Mexican classical violinist, conductor, and composer Juan Huac Planos, dies of pneumonia at 40. In 1941, Louis Brandeis, American